Okay, so 20th of November, today, on Universal Children's Rights Day, we address various dimensions of children's rights. And more importantly, we address the vicious violations of those rights that unfortunately still take place on a daily basis. Now, the underlying cause of many of these violations can actually be traced back to one fundamental human right, being the right to an identity. Today's world counts 1.2 billion undocumented people. Mother Earth counts 290 million invisible children. Now let these numbers sink in. 50% of all children born in Africa do not have a birth certificate. India alone counts 71 million invisible children, and every 10 minutes, a Syrian child is born within a refugee settlement that has little to no hope of ever receiving any formal attestation of its existence. Now, the numbers are staggering, and the consequences are immense. Now, the reasons for this lack of registration vary. In some cases, it's a matter of financial barriers where parents are not capable of paying the registration fee. In other cases, it's a matter of logistical, political, or infrastructural barriers, and sometimes it's a combination of those factors. The disastrous effect, however, is that these children face increased risk of falling victim to practices such as child labor, organ trading, prostitution, and child trafficking. Because if you come to think about it, your identity is your access to society. Your identity is your access to education, it's your access to health, it's your access to justice. And without any legal identity, these children will face a life of social exclusion and marginalization, and a life that will be characterized by discrimination and isolation. Now, this is exactly why legal identity and birth certificate is a basic human right. By providing children with birth certificates, it's the first step to safeguarding their rights, which have been adopted under international law. It's been recognized in many international conventions, including the Convention of the Right of the Child, specifically speaking, Article 7 and 8. And even though also within the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, specifically speaking, UN SDG 16.9, which stands for legal identity for all, including a birth certificate, we as Zink Foundation, on behalf of which I'm standing here today in all humbleness, we have taken it upon ourselves to pursue this mission and to reinforce actual implementation of these goals by advocating and lobbying for reinforcement of the UN SDG 16.9 and also striving for a global standard in issuing birth certificates. Now, ZINC stands for Zero Invisible Children, which unequivocally also echoes our big, hairy, audacious goal, which is a world in which every child that's born is granted a legal identity. Now, how do we plan on doing that? How do we aim to achieve this? By leveraging blockchain technology, we are able to provide these children with resilient digital identities, permanent, resilient digital identities that are immune to war, conflict, natural disaster, and human error. Now, ZINC is the outcome of the remarkable yet painful personal narrative of our founder, Tay El Rajula. Tay was working in The Hague, actually, for many years. Had a successful career, was paying his taxes, was enjoying football matches at the ADO Stadium during the weekends, living the good Dutch life, until his knowledge worker visa, or kennismigrantvisum as we call it, expired. And By that, he was condemned to the life of the invisible man in the Dutch asylum seeker system. Why? Because Tay was born to Syrian parents in Kuwait, and his birth records were destroyed during the Gulf War. Now, even though he had never lived in Syria, his Syrian background made him apply for asylum here in the Netherlands. And despite the somewhat optimistic prediction of his attorney at that time, he did not spend a couple of days awaiting the outcome of his procedure. He actually spent more than 2 years in Dutch refugee camps, different locations throughout the country. And it was during this time that the magnitude and the gravity of this problem became apparent to him. And it was not just his own experience, but also the narratives of the thousands of other refugees that he encountered during his stay there that led him to creating this solution, this technical solution that allows for resilient identities. And by doing so, he also contributes to an ecosystem of social inclusion, so to say. Just a brief anecdote I'd love to share with you. Tay once shared that with me, and I'll take the liberty of sharing it with you here as well tonight. At some point, his roommate at the refugee camp was a Syrian heart surgeon. Now, this brilliant man was capable of conducting open heart surgery, blindfolded, with his eyes closed. However, this gentleman ended up working at Albert Heijn as a stock clerk. Why? Because he wasn't capable of certifying his credentials. Now, I know that tonight we're talking about and we're focusing on children's rights, but I think that this example painfully demonstrates the effects on the long run when children are not given an identity at birth and a chance of becoming a full-fledged citizen. Now, from that small room at the AZC, or the refugee camp, Tay founded Tyken, a blockchain startup. And together with his co-founders, Jimmy Snoek and Khaled Maliki, Tyken has matured and has actually become a thought leader in the domain of digital identities and blockchain technology. And Tyken is working together with governments and NGOs such as Red Cross to help those in vulnerable circumstances to regain their identities. Now, where ZINC started as a program within Tyken, we felt at some point that the mission and the purpose of ZINC deserved its own dedicated, non-profit-driven entity. Hence the newly founded Zink Foundation. And on a very personal note, when Tay asked me to join him on this mission and his vision and to put my experience and background and network as an intercultural connector to this good cause, I couldn't be more happy, obviously, but also frankly speaking, as a mother of 3 young children, and also having a fair share of relatives and close friends who were faced by war and also arrived to the Netherlands as refugees. This resonates with me. The mission of ZINC resonates with me on a very personal level. Now, this summer we had the honor of launching Zink Foundation at Her Royal Highness Princess Laurentien's residence. And ever since then, we have embarked on our mission to, as I said, reinforce these goals, to work towards a global standard in issuing birth certificates. And we hope by raising awareness about this daunting task that we have ahead of us, we also hope to educate people about the technical solutions that exist nowadays to tackle this daunting task. Now, as a newly found foundation, a young foundation, we are still very much on the lookout for potential partners to collaborate with, to join forces with, funding. So if any one of you here tonight feels that you have something you would like to share with us and that can contribute to our mission in empowering these children and increasing their well-being, then please come and speak to us afterwards. And yes, we would like to invite you to join us on our mission to turn these invisible children into invincible ones. Thank you very much.